much for being with us today. And this sound right here. Yes, it's Johnny Cash Friday, but it's also our Conservative Future segment. And we have in the studio with us once again, Hannah Webb joins us. Hannah, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I love being here.
Yes. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. All right. So, one rumor that I heard that I now know to be true, there was a billboard that has gone up in Northeast Arkansas, and it's a Jan Morgan billboard. It's paid for by, friends of Jan Morgan. And I was told that the governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson, wanted to know specifically who was responsible for that billboard. And so he called the mayor of Jonesboro and eventually found who the owner was. And there was basically this Spanish Inquisition of, who is responsible for putting this billboard up. Now, Hannah, I understand that you donated to have this billboard put up. Is that correct?
I sure did. And so let me disclaimer here. I'm taking my College Republican hat off. So this is by no means the opinion of the College Republicans. These are the opinions of Hannah Webb. So, yes, Governor, I donated money to this billboard. If that scares you, intimidates you, if you have an issue with that, by all means, call me, text me, email me, come see me. I don't care. I don't understand why you're so intimidated by it. If you don't like that she has billboards up, put your own up. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Governor, could you please explain to me why you're so intimidated by this? Why it is so pressing to you to know the specific names of these citizens who chose to put this billboard up?
How did you find out that this was going on? I mean, there was obviously a group of you. I mean,
what
actually happened? Tell us what happened according to how you understand the
Well,
event.
if you want to start from the beginning, there's just a group of us here in NEA. We're NEA for Jan, and we're just a committee. We meet every week, and all about getting Jan elected. And so we're in charge of the NEA section. So we had some billboards donated to us. It was our responsibility to put the vinyl up on them. Wonderful. So we began collecting donations for that. And a lot of the money came from people on the committee, people outside the committee, random people who love Jan who was like, yes, I want to help. So you're talking about these are your genuine. I'm a college student. Do you think that I've got, just extra money laying around to be handing out?
Right.
No. I believe in Jan so much, and I understand it is so important to get her face on a billboard. And so these are your grassroots people donating as much as they possibly can to get her in office. I mean, that's all that it is. So we came together, we got it printed, we got them put up. I mean, that's it,
Yeah.
point blank. So we did.
Right.
It's democracy.
And so then,
competition.
where were you, or what, when you found out that the governor, what exactly happened as far as who did the governor call?
So, as I have heard, the governor called Mayor Perrin.
And the mayor of Jonesboro.
Yes.
Okay.
And mayor's like, well, I don't know. So he called a former mayor at Bono. And he was like, well, I don't know. So he called the owners of the billboards. And he was like, oh, man, what have I got myself into? And so,
the owner was? I bet the owner was kind of intimidated.
It's just like, oh, my gosh, the governor of Arkansas is demanding to know who put this billboard up. When, obviously, citizens of Jan Morgan did. Says it right there on the billboard. It's financial law. You got to put that on there.
Right.
And so, he called us and he was like, what do we do about this? And then so he eventually ended up telling them, it's really none of your business who put it up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I just feel like, wow. It's certainly a form of intimidation. Or at the very least, there's, if you're just in the billboard business and all of a sudden the governor's like, well, who, you would feel intimidated. You would feel, okay, here's somebody in power who is, giving me, basically interrogating me, trying to figure out who my customers are.
I say he should capitalize on it. Now he's got some publicity.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go. Sell once we take our Jan ones down, of course. Sell it. Hey, this is the famous governor billboard.
Yeah.
Come get it.
Yeah, exactly. This is a great placement for your message.
Yes, thank you for the publicity.
Yeah. And maybe Conduit News will put a billboard up there.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
So more than anything, though, I'm flattered. I'm flattered that we have caught his attention.
Yeah.
And so,
well,
take it as it is.
Well, I appreciate you being so bold and saying that, and I know you took your College Republican hat off, and I appreciate that, but, it's so the hat still to the side.
Right.
Why are you supporting Jan Morgan? Why do you believe in her?
Okay, so I'll give you my I Stand with Jan spill here. We'll start from the beginning. So a little over a year
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here, and we want you to be a part of the program. And if you do, you can call us or text us 870-275-9799. Go to facebook.com/Conduit News. If you want to watch the program, you can sound off and participate with our online audience. And they like to share articles and stuff and all kinds of little tidbits that, are fun to read. And some of the stuff makes it on the program, and some of the stuff makes it on the program a few days after it's posted on our on the thread there. So be watching out for that. So yesterday, in the public corruption trial of John Woods, we have former state representative Micah Neal, who has already pled guilty. He decided to testify, and we kind of got a first look at, I think what you would say is the government's star witness here. Doug Thompson, with reporting on the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the headline, "Conspirators Strapped for Cash, Record Shows." So what we're told here, and this is the general theme, is that everybody is making a lot of money, but they're all spending it, and they need more and more money, and they're all strapped for cash. And being strapped for cash and being in a political position of power is not a good combination if you're someone who thinks public corruption is a bad thing. You're essentially walking into a world of temptation. I feel like as I've read this article a couple of times now, I am now beginning to realize the benefits, the apparent benefits of a politician who has a steady, honest stream of income outside of the Marble Palace. Meaning politicians, and I have said this before, politicians that have jobs back home in their districts are, in many cases, better legislators. Not all the time, but most of the time, because they don't need the job. You know what I'm saying? They don't need the job to support themselves or to support their families. But when you have someone that does need the job, there is a greater temptation to go down there and figure out how to carve out a financial niche using the power that the people have given to you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, again, generally speaking, is the biggest conclusion or the broadest conclusion, I think even the most important conclusion that you can take from all of this. I think it's very important for these politicians to have jobs to go back to or businesses of their own. And I think if you look at voting records, not all the time, but much of the time, the politicians that have jobs to go back home to, I think, are able to withstand the temptation. So what we are told by Doug Thompson here, scroll it down just a hair, Joe, we are told that John Woods kept at least 4 bank accounts not one of them kept a positive balance. He had as many as 16, overdraft fees. He had as many as 16 overdraft fees in a month. So Woods got $40,000, and this is just one of the wire transfers that we know. Okay, so yesterday in court, you have Mike and Neal. He's testifying. So we find out that Woods got $40,000 in a kickback, and it was a wire transfer, and it was transferred to his bank account on October the 1st back in 2013. Once he got that $40,000 wire transfer, he then immediately took out a cashier's check to pay a debt of $33,000. And he did this 2.5 hours after it dropped in his account. So he gets a $40,000 kickback, $33,000 goes out the bank account in the form of a cashier's check 2.5 hours later. Now, these were according to statements made, Doug Thompson reports, by the U.S. attorney at the trial yesterday. Now, the defense, with a straight face, is calling the $40,000 wire transfer. They're saying it's not a kickback. It was a loan. And the $33,000 was to pay back a previous loan. So we have loans on top of loans on top of loans. I wonder if those loans show up in your tax returns, by the way. Or you're keeping up with interest, rather, is what I mean to say. Are you keeping up with the interest? So, former state representative Mike and Neal, he sits down, gives his testimony yesterday. We find out that $100,000 a year is how much more he was making. State Representative Mike and Neal, just to give you an idea, he was making more than $100,000 a year from his family's restaurant, and thousands more a month from legislative per diem. When they go to the meetings, they get, $150 a day. And he was still struggling financially. Now think about that. He's making over $100,000 a year, thousands more a month from his legislative job, and this guy still is struggling financially. Now that's interesting. What would you say, Joe? Joe on the other side of the glass just said, if I had that kind of money, no problems. No, that's not true. Have you never heard that song? The more money you make, the more problems you have. Was that Biggie Smalls that said that? Will you look up and see if it's Biggie Smalls? I think that's what said it. Yeah, who actually said it? Is it in a song? If it's in a song, I don't want to hear it. I can guarantee you I don't want to hear it. So the more money you have, the more problems you have. That's certainly true here. So at that point, when, again, Mike and Neal making over $100,000 a year, thousands more a month in per diem with his legislative job, he decided to accept $18,000 in kickbacks in 2 envelopes filled with $100 bills, and he took this money behind his family restaurant in Springdale, and this was according to his testimony.
It's Biggie Smalls, but it's more money, more problems.
Oh, it's Biggie Smalls. It's Biggie Smalls, but it's mo money, mo problems. Okay. So it goes on. The
Is that the same person as Notorious B.I.G.?
Yes, that is the same person as Notorious B.I.G. So there's a third co-conspirator in the case, obviously, Randall Shelton. And so he's talked about in this article and was mentioned yesterday. And he's the key kind of linchpin in a way because he's the guy that's funneling the money and the payments back to Woods and Neal here. So we know that Neal pled guilty back in January of 2017 because he admitted receiving the $38,000 in kickbacks. And we don't know what his sentence is going to be. His sentence is going to be because he's testifying now in this, in the trial that started on Monday. Some interesting things that are detailed here. this is all about general improvement funds, just to remind you. So when Neil took the $18,000 and $100 bills stuffed into 2 Arvest Bank envelopes in December 2014 behind his family's restaurant, that was a kickback for directing $50,000 in general improvement funds to Ecclesia College, and that is what Neil testified to yesterday. That's very important. Neil testified, according to Doug Thompson, that Shelton delivered. He was the courier. He's the guy that gave him $18,000 in cash stuffed into 2 Arvest Bank envelopes in December 2014 behind his family's Springdale restaurant. The money was a kickback for directing $50,000 in improvement funds to Ecclesia. The $40,000 Shelton transferred to Woods 4 days after a $50,000 payment from Ecclesia was a loan to a friend, according to Shelton's defense. They are saying that it is a loan. That's the defense. I'm telling you. I don't know. You know, you never know here. Remember Bob Menendez? Senator Menendez up in New Jersey? That guy beat the rap. I mean, and people had him what we thought dead to rights. You never know what kind of defense might work here. Now, here's something interesting. Where did the money go? When John Woods gets the $40,000 wire transfer and then takes out a cashier's check for $33,000, where did the money go? Where did he send that money? Listen to this. The $40,000 Shelton transferred to Woods 4 days after a $50,000 payment from Ecclesia was a loan to a friend, according to Shelton's defense. Bank records from Paradigm, that's the consulting firm, Paradigm Consulting, and for Woods were detailed in court by Christy Copps, fraud research specialist for Arvest Bank. Both Woods and Paradigm kept their accounts there. Woods' bank records, Copps testified, showed as many as 16 overdraft penalties in a month's time. The $40,000 alleged kickback was wire transferred from Paradigm's account to one of Woods on October 1st, 2013. Woods took out a $33,000 cashier's check payable to a Bob Srigley. Bob Srigley. Here is a new name. Bob Srigley, Thompson writes, from the same receiving account 2 hours and 20 minutes later. A Robert Srigley of Fayetteville is a past president of the Arkansas Check Cashers Association and could not be reached for comment. Neither Srigley nor any other creditor showed up on Woods' 2012 or 2013 statements of financial interest, according to the Arkansas Secretary. Well, why would you? I mean, if you're already doing all this illegal activity, why are you going to be honest about, campaign finance reporting? I mean, honestly, I don't think that's a stretch. But, here's where it's interesting to me. It's like, where was the temptation, or why was there so much temptation? And I'm specifically focusing on Mike and Neil here because there's something that Mike and Neil testified to yesterday. Joe, you're going to want to hear this. So if you're making $100,000, over $100,000 a year, and you're making thousands more in your legislative salary, what's the temptation to try to get an extra, $18,000 or something, or an extra $38,000? I mean, I know, it's a large percentage compared to what you're making. I get that, but according to Neil's testimony, he was kind of, I guess, awed, if you will, or wooed, because apparently John Woods had some sports memorabilia. Sound odd, Joe, right? Well, listen to what the report says. Listen to what this report says. Neil said, okay, this is Doug Thompson reporting. This is his testimony yesterday. Neil said he became involved in the kickbacks because he was having financial trouble and asked Woods how he made money. Neil said he asked Woods because he observed Woods had a nicely furnished Little Rock apartment with sports memorabilia such as a baseball bat signed by Pete Rose and a signed photograph of Michael Jordan. That's all that it takes, apparently. Living that good life I'm sorry. I think this is great. I mean, I don't know. Would the same thing happen to me if I was a politician and I was in somebody's nice apartment and there was like some Battlestar Galactica model signed by Edward James Olmos, and I'd be like, oh man, this guy's really made it. I got to get me one of those. What do I need to do to make some money here? What do I would I geek out if like Patrick Stewart signed a model of the Enterprise? Like, I've got to have this. Right? So I guess, it's just you never know what's going to push you over the edge into illegal activity. In this case, it was a signed baseball bat by Pete Rose and Michael Jordan autograph.
I know what's going to get you for something like this. It's simple. Think about it.
What?
A model DeLorean signed by the entire cast of Back
That would
to the
do
Future.
it. That would do it. Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd. Yeah, I would. I guess that's what I would have to do it. I'd start directing. I'd start directing that taxpayer money to Ecclesia College and getting a kickback. If I saw that, I'd be like, wow, this guy's made it, living that good life, living that sweet movie memorabilia life. I mean, honestly, what I kind of think is, I'm like, what? I mean, that's his testimony. According to Doug Thompson, that's what he testified to. He's like, well, I'm having financial trouble. And I observed, hey, this guy's, not only does he have a nice apartment, he's also got disposable income. Turns out, though, that wasn't the case, was it? Apparently, there's that philosophy, you fake it till you make it, right? And in this case, making it ends up being, we're in a federal courtroom. Let's take a break, folks. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell, back in just a moment.
This is ASA News, The Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. I'm Bob Baloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, The Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? Revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. I'm sorry, Bob, the new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? I mean, revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government,
The government better not tax our patients.
the more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patients will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Interestingly enough, Joe, I mean, if we're really talking about, getting into illegal activity because you witness that John Woods has a well-furnished Little Rock apartment as well as sports memorabilia like a Pete Rose, an autographed Pete Rose bat, and a autographed photo of Michael Jordan, and that's just like, wow, this guy, John Woods, he's figured out how to make some money in Little Rock. By the way, that assumption, man, it's not doing Arkansas's reputation any favors, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Like, whoa, doesn't take a lot, does it? Interestingly enough, though, Pete Rose pled guilty to felonies. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of a coincidence a little bit, right? Pete Rose was, and this is April 21st of 1990. Rose pleads guilty to 2 tax charges, felony, former Red Star manager, can get up to 6 years in prison, but opinions vary as to whether he will serve time. Again, all the way back to 1990. Yep. Oh, that's a good point. Yep. If you idolize somebody or there are certain expectations, you're living up to their maybe they're setting the standard. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. For those of you who are just joining us, what we're talking about is that former State Representative Mike Neal testified yesterday in the public corruption trial of John Woods, and he testified that the reason he became involved in the kickback scheme is he needed the money. He was making over $100,000 a year at his business. And, how I said... Which is, I said earlier, I said most of the time. I said most of the time your good legislators are the ones that have businesses to go back to. Those are your good ones most of the time because they can stand up to Little Rock. But in this case, he had a business, a family business, and it wasn't enough. He was making over $100,000, plus he was making the legislative salary and thousands of dollars a month doing that. And he goes down to Little Rock, and he testified yesterday that he saw John Woods' well-furnished Little Rock apartment, and he saw that he had sports memorabilia, an autographed Pete Rose bat, and a Michael Jordan photo that was autographed, and he thought, wow, John Woods has figured out how to make some money. And then he said, how do you make money? And that's when he got caught up in the kickback scheme.
Over $100,000 a year. It's not good enough to live in the top 1%. You got to live in the top 0.5%.
Yeah, you gotta keep scheming, man,
Got to make it to that where you are number one.
And look, I mean, it's you make that kind of money and you just start to over leverage yourself. You start to spend money you shouldn't spend. Talk 1% in Arkansas, you say, yeah. So I mean, this is amazing to me though, because what we're dealing with here is, well, I just think it means like, you know what, you can assume maybe we're just all. I'll tell you more in a minute. I gotta go to break.
Year ago, I started volunteering for a conservative economic group, Americans for Prosperity. I'm sure we're all familiar with it.
Yes.
Okay, so it was at that time I'll be honest, I didn't pay attention to Arkansas politics. Just Arkansas, Republican state, that's all I knew. So anyways, when I get in there and I start volunteering for this organization, every single day I am making calls to bat down tax increases that are coming from our governor. And so then I start realizing, oh, the governor does this. Oh, the governor does that. It very, very quickly. I realized, who the heck is this guy? How dare he call himself a Republican? Why is he in office? So from the get-go, you've got to understand, this took me a couple weeks to understand.
Yeah.
It didn't take, rocket science to get this.
Well, Republicans stand for certain things.
Well, exactly.
And these are the opposite of the
I
policy.
always like to say, I'm a Christian first, a conservative second, a Republican third.
Yeah.
So, conservative comes among this. And so I'm a conservative. I'm sitting here like, this is not conservative. What is going on? And so it very, very quickly, I was anybody but Asa. Very quickly. And so there were even things that were going on, and I was like, should I be a part of these things because it's dealing with the governor? I don't want to look like I'm supporting the governor, but at the same time, I can't let his failures as a Republican stop me from networking and making connections and understand how this world works. I actually had to go to, I didn't have to go. I went to a fundraiser of his just as like a volunteer. We get hit up to be volunteers often, and so I cried because I so desperately did not want to support this man, but I also was not going to let him stop me from networking and seeing how this world works and making connections with these people. So anyways, fast forward a little bit. There's always talk here and there, somebody going to primary him, somebody going to primary him. And then, all our hopefuls were like, not yet, not yet.
Yeah, Tim Griffin was
we thought TG was going to primary him.
Yeah, a lot of people thought he
was. And it didn't happen, and that was fine. And I didn't expect anybody to primary him. And then all of a sudden, Jane Morgan pops up, and I had never heard of her. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And so I knew from that moment, all right, this is going to be my girl. Like, this is who I'm going to support.
Right.
But he, at the same time, didn't know anything about her. So fast forward, and she is to meet with the college Republicans before she met with the Craighead County Republican Committee. We were supposed to have a meeting with her. And that day, I was just, tired, run down. I was like, oh, gosh, I got to go meet this lady, like, blah, blah. Well, then, so it ended up, we had a very unique experience where we got to sit down with her, and not many of us came, so it got to be a very intimate setting, sit down at across the table and got to speak with her about all these issues and things. I mean, from that moment, I called my family and I said, look, she's the real deal. I will move a mountain for her. She is everything I hope to be if I ever find myself in her position, because she is a woman, unintimidated, unafraid, who is conservative, who refused to stand down for what she believes in.
Wow.
Because just I myself, I get so passionate about these topics, and I understand not everybody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I couldn't finish my thought, but what I was trying to say is, essentially what we're dealing with is children, or our children. But, I mean, we kind of all are this way. You never know. I mean, we're all hypocrites in a way of, the second I say was like, can you believe that this man was tempted to get involved in a kickback scheme because of a signed Michael Jordan photo? And it sounds ridiculous. I mean, it really does. And but so Joe and I, during the break, we were talking about what would happen if we had to take the stand. Let's say we got pinched for some sort of public corruption scandal like Mike and Neil or John Woods. And so we're testifying like Mike and Neil did yesterday. For those of you that don't know, Mike and Neil said that he became involved in the kickback scheme because he was having financial trouble and asked Woods how he made money. Neil said he asked Woods because he observed that Woods had a nicely furnished apartment with sports memorabilia such as a baseball bat signed by Pete Rose and a signed photograph of Michael Jordan. And it's like, well, when I say that's why I got involved in illegal activity, because that's living the good life, it sounds kind of silly now that you say it. But we were saying, so what would our things be if you took the stand? And it would be much worse, because the things that would make me, it's like, I already said, Edward James Olmos, Battlestar Galactica. But Joe and I have actually had this conversation before. If you could have one item of movie memorabilia, what would it be? And Joe's is absolutely the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. And I still don't understand why this is your one.
Because okay, so my favorite, it's a Batman item. First
Yeah.
off. So my favorite villain is the Riddler. I've always loved the Riddler. I've always loved riddles as a kid. I was like solving them. So like when I watched the Batman Forever movie for the first time, I was like, oh man, I like this character. Like he's crazy, he's zany, but he's still intelligent.
You're talking about Jim Carrey here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So, but he's still intelligent, and he has like a interesting, like I don't know. I thought his character was always interesting.
Can you imagine this getting reported in media reports? Joe, don't ever get involved in public corruption. I can't imagine.
I don't plan on.
You know, I don't know. Does the judge gavel down the jury if they start laughing at the witness? So I got involved in the public corruption because he pulled out an autographed cane of the Riddler, signed by Jim Carrey, and I thought,
Riddler's cane
this
from
man,
the movie.
you know what? I got to ask this guy some questions. He clearly knows how to make that money.
The judge would probably hold the entire jury for contempt of court.
He would just rule right there and be like, you know, you're guilty of just being a moron. Anyway, sorry. I would probably go down for like, you know, Harrison Ford's like Indiana Jones whip or something. Like, and be like, oh, wow, okay. How do you make that money to buy all of this stuff? You know, that's what's so funny is it's like you'd think that this was like going to, you know, Mar-a-Lago or like Donald Trump's Trump Tower and be like, wow, this guy's actually figured out how to make money. But no, it's
a golden toilet.
It's a Little Rock apartment owned by John Woods, and he's got an autographed picture of Michael Jordan and a Pete Rose bat. And the guy's like, I got to figure out how to make some money, you know.
Well, you know,
how do you do this?
You know, Johnny Cash has a remedy for a man cave, especially something like this.
Really?
Yeah, one piece at a time.
That's a good. I like it. By the way, Johnny Cash Fridays tomorrow, folks. So send us your requests if you wanna hear a Johnny Cash song. You can text us 870-275-9799, or you can sound off over on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Conduit News. Now, let's kind of build on this, right? Because we do have some new information. The trial yesterday, the public corruption trial of John Woods, did give us some new information. We have a new name, and the new name is hang on. Well, now I've lost it because it's further up in this Doug Thompson article. So here's the thing. So John Woods, he gets $40,000 wire transfer into his account, and he immediately takes 2 hours later a cashier's check, and he gives it to pay off a debt. The debt, according to what happened in court yesterday, the cashier's check, was paid to a Bob Srigley, Srygley, Srigley, and it basically got 2 hours later he took $33,000 of the $40,000 to pay Bob Srigley. Now, who is that? Well, the Gazette reports that there's a Robert Srigley of Fayetteville, and he is the past president of the Arkansas Check Cashers Association, and he could not be reached for comment. Now, I got a text from a legislator just now who will remain nameless, and this legislator told me that there is a memory of John Woods being involved in some check cashing legislation. So now, I get to go digging. That there's, all of this stuff. None of this stuff is done by accident. You know, whether you're getting a $80,000 wire transfer from a nursing home lobbyist and your name is Senator Jake Files, or whether you're getting $40,000 and giving 33 back. I mean, this is, you hear what I've said before. Everything you get in Little Rock from the government, you are expected to tithe a portion of it to somewhere else. It's just a constant scratching of each other's backs. So you need to think about that. So, okay, we keep going here. See here. The defense for these guys are saying, no, these were just loans, which is laughable and ridiculous. But we'll see we'll see what's going on. I mean, I was here's the thing. The loan defense. Well, if I get caught, if I get caught, I could just say it was a loan. I wonder if that's the mentality. Woods and Neal, both Republicans, cooperated to use part of the refunded $400,000 to steer another $200,000 to Ecclesia. This was after lobbyist Russell Rusty Cranford was involved in another kickback scheme with a company called AmeriWorks, which was a subsidiary of, I believe, Preferred Family Healthcare. And they realized they were pinched, and so AmeriWorks sent the money back. $400,000 was given back to the government. And Woods and Neal were like, oh, okay. They sent it back because they were uncomfortable? Well, we'll just send $200,000 of it to Ecclesia in exchange for another kickback. Now, this is according to the indictment. We've known these facts for a while. We now know, though, from when the indictment was filed to now, that Rusty Cranford is now set for trial June the 11th, although that's a new thing. He was set to go to trial in May. I think I reported yesterday, and then I saw where Rusty Cranford's trial had been moved back to June yesterday. Now, he's being charged out of Springfield, Missouri. Neal also testified he put in his personal account. Now, listen to this. Listen to this, Joe. Neal also testified he put in his personal account a $1,000 campaign donation from Milton Russell Rusty Cranford for his 2012 state house race. And Neal is told that Neal said in his testimony that Woods told him to make sure his campaign showed a deficit at the end of the year so Cranford could legally write a check to the campaign fund. These guys, can you say loophole? Just look for the sign above the door that reads loophole. Can you say loophole? That's what these guys know. And I'm sorry, every one of you who supported John Woods' ethics amendment. And look, I know there's some disagreements there. There's some people that thought that term limits, whatever. I got it. But can we all say that it looks a little ridiculous? Can we, just a little ridiculous, like because this is the guy that says that puts an ethics amendment on the ballot, and he's the most unethical guy arguably down at the Marble Palace. He's telling freshman representatives, hey, by the way, make sure you show a deficit so that this guy can give money to your campaign. I mean, this is really the heart of corruption here. That's a good point. All right, so let's see, we keep going here, and that's pretty much the end of the article. But that's a lot there. Doug Thompson reporting again, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. You go get the article. Conspirators strapped for cash, records show. And I'll go ahead and post it on the Facebook feed. Matter of fact, I don't have the Facebook feed pulled up right now, so you'll have to forgive me, guys. I'll post it right now. We're gonna you know what? Let's take a break real quick. I know we're taking an early break, but we're going to take a break real quick, and then we're going to get to a Conduit for Action article when we come back, as well as I'll preview for you Mr. Leo Nepper, going to be on the program at 7:05 today. Leo is with the Citizen Alliance of Pennsylvania. And it's a great group, and they're going to tell us what they're doing to fight for freedom and economic liberty in Pennsylvania. And so I'm going to preview that for you, as well as at 7:33 we'll have Mr. Joey McCutcheon, who's a Fort Smith attorney, talking about FOIA. There have been some new developments, meetings and such about freedom of information, and we'll talk about that as well. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment, folks.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I appreciate the feedback that I'm getting from legislators on this segment. I imagine this will be, a lot of live listeners, but as well as the morning goes on and as Conduit News continues to shape the narrative daily by having a morning show, I'm assuming I'll be contacted by more of you guys out there. But I got a text from yet another legislator that says in 2013 or 2015, so they can't quite remember, that Woods pushed an all-tell arena and Ticketmaster legislation, and now people are pontificating what all he got for that. He stated he went to multiple shows with different people? Did he get free tickets? What else? Sports memorabilia? Question mark. That's an interesting text from a legislator. Sports memorabilia. Apparently, that's all some need to realize. No, it's not. No. You might think you have to have a Bentley. That's the, as Dave Ramsey says, status symbol of choice. No. It's not the. It's certainly not the pay it off home mortgage. I'll tell you that much. I'm killing it today. I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Next up, we have, let's see. Oh, I wanted to remind all you guys, with all of the John Woods trial stuff going on, I want to remind you who wanted John Woods to remain in office. That's right. Da, 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 da. Here it is. You are court. This is a copy of an invitation from back in 2016. 2015. Yeah. Well, that's when the fundraiser was supposed to be. October 20th, 2015, for the re-election of John Woods. You are cordially invited to a fundraiser for the re-election of Senator John Woods with special guest, in big letters, Governor Asa Hutchinson. And there you go. That was that's John Woods' campaign. There you go. P.O. Box, and so yeah. If it was up to if it was up to Asa, John Woods would still be in office right now, or well, he would have resigned after he was indicted. I guess you can do more. Some people think you can do more with a corrupt Republican than you can with an honest one, and that is true if we're talking about Marble Palace antics. Let me see here. And here's the thing, John Woods, if you look at that invitation, he didn't run. He didn't run shortly after that. They threw a fundraiser, then he didn't run, and he didn't run because he knew the FBI was coming for him. And that's why. Folks, we have talked a lot about trying to hold Arkansas's government accountable. And coming up at 7:05, we're going to be talking with Mr. Leo Knepper. And Mr. Leo Knepper is the CEO of the Citizen Alliance of Pennsylvania. And listen to their mission. Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania is a nonprofit organization founded to raise the standard of living of all Pennsylvanians by restoring limited government, economic freedom, and personal responsibility. By empowering the Commonwealth's employers and taxpayers to break state government's iron triangle of career politicians, bureaucrats, and big government lobbyists, this restoration will occur and Pennsylvania will prosper. We are highlighting this, and we're going to highlight other state organizations as well, because we want you to know that the work that Conduit is doing, trying to hold government accountable at the local state level, there are other organizations across this country trying to do the same thing. Now, scroll down on this page because I want you to see what their mission is. Listen, the Iron Triangle, mobilizing public support for pro-employer, pro-taxpayer legislation. And look at that number 2 there for the Citizen Alliance of Pennsylvania, exposing lawmakers who vote against employers and taxpayers. That's a big one. Listen to this. Here is the one of the officers at the CAP is what they call it, Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania. Listen to what he says. Go ahead and click on that video, Joe. He's a former, I think, General Assemblyman.
Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania. We call it CAP. We keep it simple because it is.
He's the chairman
of
this
for you.
organization.
And it's been a long time coming. I left the General Assembly 20-some years ago because there were hardly any employers over there, let alone employees of those employers. And look at us. 20-some years later, we lead the nation in all the wrong things. Taxes, unfunded liabilities. The only way we're going to fix it is what will be in the hearts of men and women who want to serve there. And CAP is the group who's going to be available for them, to train them, to fund them, to get them elected, to serve without pension, serve limited terms, improve the business climate, clean up the legislative process, and then go back home. And we're the centerfold for that. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is 90 miles west of where liberty was given to us 223 years ago. We can be the model for America by joining CAP, by getting more people elected to the General Assembly who do not have a long-term career in mind. They have in mind the ability to come and contribute back to this Commonwealth and help fix it. Because in our DNA, our forefathers, our grandfathers and great-grandfathers gave us the work ethic, gave us the history. And it's our duty now, an opportunity, to step up and fix Pennsylvania. Make it competitive again. A Pennsylvania comeback that'll lead the nation like it did so many years ago.
The Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania. We'll be talking with the CEO of that organization again coming up at 7:05. So certainly want to pick his brain about what's it like in other states when you're fighting really the same thing that we are fighting here as a grassroots movement and a grassroots organization. And I love the part of their mission is exposing what the politicians do, and that's what we're dealing with right now. I mean, right now, well, if you look at all the public corruption, you look at these public corruption trials that we're going through. I said this earlier in the week, but you kind of have to put in because that's why the whiteboard this week says we just want honest government, because we actually at this point have to put some of our conservative policies on the back burner. You know what I mean? Like we can't even. The hill is so daunting. If you don't have politicians in there that are at least honest, that are going to, okay, let's actually have the debate. Do we grow government? The answer is no. Well, do we keep it the same size? Do we shrink it? Do we keep it the same size and let the economy grow so that technically government did shrink? There are ways to look at it like that, But I don't think you can even pursue policies, or it's very difficult to, if we have this level of corruption in Arkansas, not to mention the bullying that's going on and how the governor's office has this heavy hand and won't let Republicans actually vote the platform. And, of course, we'll get to this article. We didn't get to it this segment like we were supposed to, but there's another fact-check article over at conduitforaction.org. ASA pushback on transgender bathroom use, ? And it's fact-checking the governor's, again, trying to pivot to the right and, hoping you don't understand what his actual record is on that particular issue, even though Conduit doesn't really even focus on social issues at all. This is an exception to that. So go check that out because it's very, very it's very interesting read. We'll probably get to it at some point in the show, maybe next hour. Yeah, I mean, what a crazy day. It's going to be a drip, drip, drip. The public corruption trial of John Woods is just going to kind of we're going to keep finding things out probably every day on a daily basis as to what happened. And, of course, I did see, though, I saw an audio clip of John Woods, one of the local news outlets, TV outlets. They were just they interviewed him real quick for about 20 seconds. And he said, he hoped to have a good day and that, let the truth be known. And the way he was addressing the media, it was like he was innocent, like he hadn't done anything wrong, And, obviously he thinks he's innocent, I guess, because he pled not guilty. But good grief. Oh, yeah. He's got that sports memorabilia on lockdown. All right. We're going to take a break. We got one more hour coming your way next. Oh, you know what's coming up on Friday? You know what's coming up tomorrow? You know who we're interviewing tomorrow? We are interviewing the owner of the Bono billboard. That's right. Yeah, we're interviewing the guy that owns the billboard, that grassroots bunch of citizens put a Jan Morgan billboard up and got Asa Hutchinson calling around trying to figure out. Now, Asa's now denying that he did that, sort of, by the way. So we'll listen to what the owner of the billboard has to say tomorrow morning for Johnny Cash Friday. But we've got one more hour coming your way next. Back in just a moment with Mr. Leo Knepper.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Arkansas, Republican state. That's all I knew. So anyways, when I get in there and I start volunteering for this organization, every single day I am making calls to bat down tax increases that are coming from our governor. And so then I start realizing, oh, the governor does this. Oh, the governor does that. It very, very quickly, I realized, who the heck is this guy? How dare he call himself a Republican? Why is he in office? So from the get-go, you've got to understand, this took me a couple weeks to understand.
Yeah.
It didn't take, rocket science to get this.
Well, Republicans stand for certain things.
Well, exactly.
And these are the opposite of the
I
policy.
always like to say I'm a Christian first, a conservative second, a Republican third.
Yeah.
So, conservative comes among this. And so I'm a conservative. I'm sitting here like, this is not conservative. What is going on? And so it very, very quickly, I was anybody but Asa. Very quickly. And so there were even things that were going on, and I was like, should I be a part of these things because it's dealing with the governor? I don't want to look like I'm supporting the governor, but at the same time, I can't let his failures as a Republican stop me from networking and making connections and understand how this world works. I actually had to go to, I didn't have to go. I went to a fundraiser of his just as like a volunteer. We get hit up to be volunteers often, and so I cried because I so desperately did not want to support this man, but I also was not going to let him stop me from networking and seeing how this world works and making connections with these people. So anyways, fast forward a little bit. There's always talk here and there, somebody going to primary him, and then, all our hopefuls were like, not yet.
Yeah, Tim Griffin was
we thought TG was going to primary him.
Yeah, a lot of people thought he
was. And it didn't happen, and that was fine, and I didn't expect anybody to primary him. And then all of a sudden, Jane Morgan pops up, and I had never heard of her. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And so I knew from that moment, all right, this is going to be my girl. Like, this is who I'm going to support.
Right.
But he, at the same time, didn't know anything about her. So fast forward, and she is to meet with the college Republicans before she met with the Craighead County Republican Committee. We were supposed to have a meeting with her. And that day, I was just, tired, run down. I was like, oh, gosh, I got to go meet this lady, like, blah, blah, blah. Well, then, so it ended up, we had a very unique experience where we got to sit down with her, and not many of us came, so it got to be a very intimate setting, sit down at across the table and got to speak with her about all these issues and things. I mean, from that moment, I called my family and I said, look, she's the real deal. I will move a mountain for her. She is everything I hope to be if I ever find myself in her position, because she is a woman, unintimidated, unafraid, who is conservative, who refused to stand down for what she believes in.
Wow.
Because just I myself, I get so passionate about these topics, and I understand not everybody's like it, but I am. And so I've been gifted with the passion and just like the knowledge of these things. I feel it's hypocrisy for me to not stand up for these things I believe in, for me to complain about all these things and not do anything about it. I feel it's hypocritical in and of myself. And so I feel called, when I'm so passionate about these things, to do something about it. And so here's my way to do it. And Jan is the same thing. She feels so passionate about these things, and she's so distraught about things that are going on in our state that no one else would step up, so she did. And so I commend her for that, and I hope that's everything I am one day, that if I see something going on, I'll stand up for it.
Wow. Wow. So
I'm all in for Jan. I'll move a mountain for her. I'll do anything for her. She's the best thing that could possibly happen to this state.
That's so interesting. I mean, I so admire, your commitment and your passion. I mean, it's so great to see that that it is being a senior in college and being so involved but being able to recognize, hey, you know what, we do need to have we need to have a government that more represents like the conservative philosophy, and I think that's what you're seeing. Gosh, so you were in, okay, I know what you say, 5 minutes. Okay, so you were watching all this from afar, and how have you been? What have you been doing now? Like when you talk to other Republicans, because there are some, and I would even say, Hannah, honestly, I think this interview that you're doing right now is going to make a lot of waves, because you are so articulate and passionate, and I would imagine the establishment is very worried to hear someone as young and educated as you are, coming out against the establishment, because that's really, Jan is very anti-establishment. So, but what's going on now, like right now, in terms of what are you feeling when you talk to other Republicans about this particular primary? Because it's interesting that, I'll let you answer, but it's interesting that you have this intimidation tactics over just a billboard when Asa has $3 million and Jan has nowhere near that much money. So what is
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, so we're just coming off a fun hour of news, and if you missed the first hour, you need to go get the podcast or go watch the program when you get to your office, because it was really good. The title of the podcast for the first hour is "The Temptation of Sports Memorabilia." I know you'd be like, "What does that mean?" Well, it has to do with State Representative Mike Neal, who pled guilty to taking kickbacks, his testimony in the public corruption trial of Senator John Woods yesterday. Go check it out. You can go to conduitnews.com or go to Conduit News or facebook.com/Conduit News and get the Facebook Live video, and you can watch and participate in the comments. Very good first hour. Go check it out. You need to listen to it. All right. I want to introduce you to an organization out of Pennsylvania. It's the Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania, and they are doing a lot of work very similar to what we're trying to do here at Conduit News, and which is spread the word, limited government, and hold our local government officials accountable. Here is Mr. Leo Knepper. He is the Chief Executive Officer for Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania. Leo, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. So just kind of give us a rundown. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about the Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania.
Well, I have been an activist, a member of the activist community in Pennsylvania, I guess going back to 2005. And the Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania actually was started in 2009. To give you a little bit, I guess, in the way of background, Pennsylvania has a history of kind of bipartisan back-scratching and corruption. And what has been, kind of found over time was that without an organization providing resistance on the, the limited government side of the spectrum, Pennsylvania's Republican Party and Pennsylvania government has really trended towards getting bigger and more costly. We kind of have an odd, or at least it separates us from a lot of our other neighboring states, in that the Pennsylvania Republican Party actually gets a significant amount of money from labor unions and also from the trial lawyers. And part of that is the legacy of one of our most famous national senators, Arlen Specter, and part of it is just kind of a result of how Pennsylvania's population is distributed.
Wow.
So there's been a lot of bad policy on a bipartisan basis. We had in 2001 a Republican governor lobby for and sign an increase to the public sector pension package for teachers, state employees, lawmakers, and that was actually right before the dot-com bubble burst.
Wow.
And there has been really no effort to kind of rein in those expenses, and as a result, we find ourselves with roughly $100 billion in unfunded liabilities in just our pension system.
Wow.
So we have a lot of fiscal problems. We are consistently ranked one of the least friendly places to do business for a variety of reasons. For tax reasons, for labor regulations, and also because there are some unique things that Pennsylvania's environmental protection departments can do to stymie progress and kind of change their requirements, regulatory requirements midstream in projects. So that really it's hampered Pennsylvania's growth. So what our organization was founded to do was really, politicians are a lot like electricity. They'll follow that path of least resistance, and because there hasn't really been an organized effort to hem them in on the side of decreasing the size of government, the size of government hasn't decreased. So what our organization was founded to do was really to provide that resistance, and we do that in two ways. We do it through we have a 501c4, so we do some direct lobbying. We do a lot of what I guess would be considered in Pennsylvania indirect lobbying, where we're educating the public about what their lawmakers are doing in the Capitol. And then we also have a state-registered political action committee, which allows us to participate in elections. And really, if you want to get politicians' attention, support a primary challenger against
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, let me ask you this. We're talking with Leo Knepper, the CEO for Citizens Alliance for Pennsylvania, and we're highlighting, the reason we're doing this, folks, is we're highlighting, what we're going through down here in Arkansas. There are other states going through similar things. There are organizations trying to fight that. Now, I'm interested, Leo, do you guys ever get any pushback for being involved in the political process the way you are? Because you just said you've got a 501c3, you've got a 501c4, you've got a way to participate in elections. So does that make anybody in Pennsylvania angry because your goal is to limit government, and the fact that you're legally using the correct entities to try to affect the most change? Do you guys get a lot of criticism for that?
Well, just a slight correction. We don't have a 501c3. We just operate a C4 and a political action committee.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, to your question, we get a lot of pushback. So we do a lot of things very differently. For example, Pennsylvania collects union dues and union political money from state employees via the payroll system and taxpayer resources. We had a bunch of Republicans kind of vote against ending that practice last year, and what we did was we actually put together a least wanted poster and mailed it out to basically every Republican donor in the state to let them know how their money was being spent in supporting these kind of people. And so, yeah, we definitely get pushback. It's kind of funny because I don't actually get phone calls from Republican establishment type people in Pennsylvania with them being angry at me. What ends up happening is they'll actually call up our donors and complain to our donors to try and get, to put pressure on them. What's interesting is that a lot of our donors used to be donors to the Republican Party and, its various tendrils. But after they've kind of learned how ineffective and counterproductive that was, they've actually switched over to donating to us. So, they will try to put pressure on our donors. We've never actually, knock on wood, run into any issues where we've had kind of abusive authority directed towards us. I actually, at one point, we were supporting a primary challenger against our Speaker of the House, a Republican, and he sent a handwritten 3-page letter over to our office telling me what a jerk I was and how much I didn't understand Pennsylvania's politics. Shortly thereafter, he retired because he didn't actually want to have to work to win a race.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's how you know you're being effective. So, Leo, tell us about the Iron Triangle. What is that?
So the Iron Triangle is a helpful illustration for us to try and educate voters. It's big government special interests, lobbyists, and career politicians. And those are really the three forces that work together to stymie not only government reform, but also to try and prevent reforms that are favorable to taxpayers. And those are they all kind of work in concert. So you have your big government special interests, and that's everything from organized labor to big business who benefits from increasing the cost of their competitors entering the market through increased regulation. Big business, one of the dirty secrets is that larger companies actually like regulation because it prevents entry into market.
Yes.
It raises competition costs, so it keeps new people from opening up businesses and becoming competitors. So big business doesn't dislike regulation. It actually creates kind of a corporatist climate.
Yeah, they want to use the government to, well, what I say is Johnny sweep the legs out from under the competition. They want to take a cheap shot at the little guy that's not using the government to, guarantee, and in some cases in Arkansas, guarantee a taxpayer flow of money to their business.
Oh, absolutely, and we have that in Pennsylvania as well. Through various taxpayer subsidies, they're actually forcing, you're forcing one competitor to subsidize another just because they have more access to the levers of power, and the people who are writing the budgets. So we've found ourselves kind of on the opposite side of the table. I guess in 2013, our Republican governor was advocating heavily to increase Pennsylvania's tax per gallon on gasoline.
Huh. We have that down here too with our Republican governor. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, to fund roads and bridges, and we actually are at this point either the highest or the second highest tax per gallon on gasoline as a result of that. But anyway, we were one of the only organizations who were out there, and really the only organization who is out there really kind of banging the drum about how bad this policy was. And so we found ourselves, we had the Chamber of Commerce and various manufacturing associations actually advocating for this higher tax. So we found ourselves numerous times on the opposite side of the table from various, what generally the public would think of as, organizations who would support conservative policy. They support lower taxes. They don't, for themselves, they don't necessarily support lower taxes for other people.
Yeah, for everybody. Yeah.
Right, for everybody. So, and then we also have a very strong public sector, government employee unions in Pennsylvania. The largest single contributor to political campaigns in Pennsylvania is the teachers union, followed by AFSCME, the government employees union. So we have a lot of money flowing from the government sector to politicians in order to basically have a seat on both sides of the negotiating table when it comes to taxes and increasing pay and things like that. And against actually decreasing the number of employees the government needs, quote unquote needs.
Yeah.
And then we have our kind of long-term lobbyists. We had an interesting thing happen a couple of years ago where one of the more famous or infamous lobbyists in the Capitol's son was actually running for a House seat. And we had the temerity to expose kind of the nonsense that he had, in fact, the son had lobbied for, and he lost his election kind of resoundingly. It was a three-way race or a four-way race, and he came in third despite having outspent a lot of the other people. And again, rather than criticizing us directly or being an adult about it and just accepting a loss, he went and sent a letter to our donors. You know, just he was completely besides himself that someone would be willing to point out the fact that his son had lobbied for much larger government.
Yeah.
You know, so really it's an issue of, for us, from our perspective, it's really an issue of increasing transparency, because we have a lot of politicians in the Republican Party who are very happy to run on a limited government platform. They are, generally speaking, you know, pro-life and pro-gun, but you don't want to leave them in the room with your good silverware because they'll rob you blind.
Wow. That's probably the best phrase of the interview right there. Yeah, it's easy. Those are the low-hanging fruit issues, and those are some of my biggest issues. But I mean, like here in Arkansas, everybody agrees on that for the most part. So, but it's like, what is your tax policy? What do you know, how do you believe, you know, the regulatory structure should look like, if any at all? And that's really when you get into the weeds and stuff. We're talking with Leo Knepper, the CEO, Citizens Alliance for Pennsylvania. The website is empowerpa.org, so check it out. That's empowerpa.org. Leo, I got one more question for you. So, folks down here in Arkansas, we probably would have lost a bet in terms of, especially if we were listening to the media coverage, that Donald Trump was going to win Pennsylvania. He did win Pennsylvania, thankfully. We do not have a Hillary Clinton presidency. So I'm just curious, what was your feeling before the election about those chances, and what was your feeling on election night when Pennsylvania went red?
So, excuse me. So I was actually really skeptical that Donald Trump would carry Pennsylvania up until probably about 3 weeks out. What I had started to notice, as you can imagine, I do quite a bit of driving in the state, and what I had imagined noticed was there were a lot of Donald Trump signs in people's yards who I had never seen a political sign for in their yards before. So, I mean, generally speaking, yard signs are a bad gauge of political, you know, intent, but the sheer number of signs that I saw in you know, previously apathetic homes was definitely something that it piqued my interest. And actually, as we were going through the night on election night, and as the returns were coming in, you know, basically at 11 o'clock, I knew that Donald Trump was going to be president. I was looking at the returns as they were coming in Pennsylvania, and there were 2 counties, I believe, around 11 o'clock at night whose returns still hadn't been reported. And they were 2 counties that I knew very well and knew for a fact. I mean, at this point, Donald Trump had something like a 30,000 vote advantage in Pennsylvania, and the television pundits were breathlessly trying to figure out whether or not Hillary would be able to pick up enough votes in the remaining counties to turn it. And I knew for a fact, just looking at it, that there was no way that would happen. The 2 counties that were out were probably 2 of the most conservative, the reddest counties in the state. So, you know, I was able to actually go to bed much earlier than everyone else because I knew what was going to happen.
Wow, that's great. That's fantastic. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. I really admire the work you guys are trying to do, and I'd love to have you back on again sometime. It's always good to make a friend in another state fighting a similar battle. So, Leo Knepper, I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Folks, again, the website, empowerpa.org. Check them out. And we're going to be talking with people who represent organizations in different states. We're going to start doing this because we wanted to let you guys know here in Arkansas that while we have a big government that, you know, doesn't seem to want to grow, you heard he's having similar problems with politicians that campaign conservatively, but they don't govern conservatively. This is a problem in D.C. and all across the country, and we're going to win. We're going to win, but we just got to keep at it. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Heading on over to conduitforaction.org. By the way, go to the Conduit for Action Facebook page if you haven't, and go give them a like. And also Conduit News if you haven't liked Conduit News, and click on notifications so you are notified when we are live on Facebook. Sometimes we'll do Facebook videos, not during broadcast when we're on location and things like that. So you want to make sure you always like Conduit News and then hit the notification button, as well as over at YouTube. You want to hit that YouTube button to subscribe at Conduit News, because we've got smaller videos. And, boy, that interview we did with Hannah Webb last week has just really taken off. Conduitforaction.org has another fact-check article. They write, Conduit for Action focuses primarily on fiscal issues, but sometimes the statements of candidates on social issues can be revealing concerning their truth-telling. This is about a politician's use of carefully crafted words, and the article is addressed to people on the right and left. Do you think transgender citizens should be able to choose whether to use either the male or female restroom by self-identifying as one gender or the other? Do you care? If you are opposed to it, you probably describe the question as, should men be able to use the restroom with women or girls? This brings us to Governor Asa Hutchinson's recent statement on the issue. On March 15, 2018, he tweeted this: "As your governor, I will always stand up for Arkansas values. I was the first to push back on the Obama administration's guidance to the states on transgender bathrooms." Back to Conduit for Action. When he talks about Arkansas values and pushback against Obama's policy, he's trying to appeal to socially conservative Republican voters. He's trying to look conservative because he has an opponent in the Republican primary, Jan Morgan. But does his statement show he is against allowing people to self-identify and choose which bathroom to use? No. And, ladies and gentlemen, if you know anything about what he did in 2017, he actively opposed even debating with politicians who wanted to just bring the bill up for a debate to limit it. Back in a minute. What's the dynamic here?
So I'll be honest, a lot of times people just don't keep up with Arkansas politics in general. And so a lot of times you're like, oh, have you heard of Jan Morgan, the governor's race? They're like, what? The governor's being primaried? And that's nothing to do with Jan Morgan. That's to do with people not keeping up with politics. And then there's some people that I know are conservatives who are like, oh, yeah, I've heard of her. Like, I want to know more about her. Like, can you tell me more? Can we hear more? Or then there's the other side of it. I mean, just yesterday, my mom was talking to a lady, and she was asking her about something, and she was so concerned that she was going to be like, oh, like, she's the motorcycle lady. Mm-hmm. And she was so concerned that was going to be her response. But actually, the girl said, oh my goodness, is she the girl that owns the gun range in Hot Springs? Mom's like, yes. She said, my grandpa loves her to death. If he could just meet her, his whole life would be complete. And so, I mean, yesterday, my mom, seriously, she called me. She said, Hannah, I had so many interactions with people who were just loved Jan. She said they loved her and they just want to know so much more about her. And so more and more and more I'm being met with that. And more we're being met with people who support Jan. But they're not going to come out and say it just yet. They're
It's
not
kind of the
gonna...
Trump situation, too. No one.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just, and that's fine. If you want to keep it to yourself, as long as you go vote on May 22nd, I don't care how loud and proud you are.
Yeah, it's like, keep it to yourself, or who knows, your business may be targeted with the Spanish Inquisition.
So tables are turning. If you know anything about Arkansas politics, if you keep up with it, and you're a true conservative. So here's my thing about this whole situation. If you are a conservative, if you claim to be a conservative, and you are not voting for Jan Morgan, one, you either do not know your information, or two, you're not a conservative. So you need to either reevaluate where you stand politically, or you need to do your research.
Yeah. The last question, though, before we got to go, we're talking with Hannah Webb. He has moderated a lot of his positions during this primary season. Now he's saying that we're going to cut taxes more. Now he's also saying we are, he's talking about bathroom bill legislation, or saying he stood up to Obama's bathroom rules. And then, of course, he's now going to reduce government by 50%, which that's not really going to happen.
Of course he is. I mean,
but is that not interesting? If anything, Jan Morgan has won in terms of making Asa acknowledge that the base, that he has governed different from the policies in the platform.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
So either way, we hope to have a victory. If she doesn't win and he does what he says during election season, wonderful.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
We got what we want.
Yeah, that's true. If he actually were to govern the way he's now representing himself, it would be nice.
It's not about the person; it's about the policy.
Yes.
And so, thank you, Jan, for the policy.
Yeah, Hannah Webb, thanks so much for being with us, and good luck to the golf tournament this weekend with the Arkansas State University College Republicans.
Thank you. And
I really appreciate you being passionate and bold, and I really respect it.
Absolutely, thank you very much,
folks. We got to take a break. It's Johnny Cash Friday. Back in just a moment. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. Welcome back to the program. We have Fort Smith attorney, Mr. Joey McCutcheon's on the line. Joey, it's been too long. How are you, sir?
Hey, doing great. Glad to be back on, Paul.
Yes, sir. So let's talk a little bit. We always love to talk about the Freedom of Information Act with you, but can you give our listeners a rundown of, the discussions that have been taking place across the state concerning different meetings and stuff on the Freedom of Information Act and where we go from here? Tell us what the status of all this is.
Yeah, do you have the rest of the afternoon to talk to me about it?
Well, maybe.
Yeah,
we can keep going.
Hey, let's start on the statewide level here. Let's start locally in Fort Smith, where Fort Smith has sent a presentation to the FOIA task force to try to narrow the definition of what a meeting is, so that they can duck and dodge and hide information. So what I want to do, and what I'm going to present to the FOIA task force next time around is I'm going to present against the cities trying to narrow the definition of FOIA, but I'm going to present a proposal to broaden the definition of FOIA. Mm-hmm. What I want to see, Paul, is that FOIA apply to state legislators, because what we've seen is that state legislators they're prone to going into the back rooms and smoking a few cigars and cutting deals in the back room. And I'm sure Governor Rockefeller, probably he knew the legislators back in '67 wouldn't have approved something that would have held them accountable. So he didn't include state legislators, but the city brought this up. The city of Fort Smith brought this up, that it doesn't apply to state legislators. So I think the people would like that. One issue that comes to mind is issue 1. That's the one that legislators referred out, although nobody was calling for it. That's the one where they're putting an arbitrary price tag on death, quadriplegia of $500,000. An arbitrary legislatively set price tag of $500,000. Do we really think that in the 20 minutes that they gave the public to discuss that down in Little Rock last time that deals weren't cut behind the scenes with high-priced lobbyists? Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of rambling here, Paul, but let me take it to the local level. Senator Jake Files. I don't think we're through with Senator Files yet. I don't think the state's through with Files, and I don't think that the feds are through with Files, because you know what's out there, Paul? We're seeing that Senator Woods is accused of taking this $40,000 paper this morning, calls it I think they call it a bribe. He called it a loan. Well, do you remember, Paul, back the document where Jake Files took $80,000 1 week after tort reform was in a wire transfer from David Norsworthy,
yes,
the nursing home conglomerate lobbyist? I mean, $80,000 wire transfer, and neither Mr. Norsworthy nor Senator Files would say that. They were given the opportunity. That was a loan. Oh, I did work on Mr. Norsworthy. So you know, where's the feds on that? Mm-hmm. Are they just going to wipe that off the book?
Here's the thing. What do you think, Joe? I mean, Jake has pled guilty, and you would assume he's cooperating with the government. So, I mean, is he going to take a bunch of people down with his testimony for a slap on the wrist sentence? Is that a possibility here?
Well, he doesn't have to take people down with anything, because the feds have the $80,000 wire transfer document, and they've had it for months now. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have to take any. David Norsworthy wire transferred Jake Files $80,000 1 week after tort reform was proposed in 2014. So, yeah, I don't think we're through with Senator Files. I think Senator Files is going to face more charges, both on a state level and a federal level, or he's rolling on people. You know, and then let's look at Ecclesia, Paul, talking about FOIA. You know, we understand the corruption trials going on, but what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks is I'm going to take the deposition of an Ecclesia records custodian, because I'm requesting records that relate to the Woods transaction, because I filed an illegal exaction suit against Ecclesia. You know, Bob Ballinger has said as recently as 2 weeks before Warren Parrish pled that, oh, well, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. And then 2 weeks later he pleads. Well, we need to remember that Representative Ballinger did work for Ecclesia. Then he's given public money. And also, let's not forget that Bob Ballinger is also the one who was behind Issue 1, which put an arbitrary price tag on the value of human life. And we know that was all for special interest, Paul. Come on.
Well, we actually interviewed State Representative Ballinger. He was on the program, I guess, a week ago today. And so we did talk about specifically, we had a lengthy discussion about it. A lot of this money, so the Woods money and a lot of the other money that ended up going from general improvement to Ecclesia was for a land deal, and they bought the land for an expansion. Now, Joey, your FOIA lawsuit was, okay, turn over the documents. Ecclesia says, no, we don't have to turn over the documents because we're a private college, and you say, yes, you do, because you took taxpayer money. So now Ecclesia came back and they said, well, we're actually a church. And so then you say, well, you can't be a church and take taxpayer money. That's unconstitutional according to the Constitution of the state of Arkansas. And so they really don't want to release the documents. And I'm curious, are we ever going to get those documents? Are we ever going to get the documents that that the college has that they're not giving up? And I'm curious to know whose names are on those documents.
Yeah, me too. And I'm as I say, I'm taking a deposition this month. Now they've been putting me off on it, putting me off on the deposition, because I'm asking the court to set a hearing. We really need a hearing early in May. You know, I would love to have an early May hearing before all the elections take place.
Yeah.
Because we need to see what other corruption's out there, if any. Why won't Ecclesia just produce these records? I mean, if they're a private college, but they've received $700,000 of taxpayer money. Why won't they? Why? And again, look at the connection here. I mean, we've got a law firm, the Story Law Firm, who Mr. Ballinger is associated with, who is representing Ecclesia now. And Mr. Ballinger, as a public official, gave money to that private college. And I'm sure back in the back rooms there were deals cut that he was pushing for more money. But he's represented them in land deals also. I mean, what's wrong with that picture? I mean, the appearance of impropriety.
And that's
shocking.
what it is. Yeah, and that, when I was talking to him on last Thursday, I was just like, all of this stuff needs to be disclosed. There needs to be. Certainly we need to know about it generally, but just in practice moving forward. If you take some of these hypotheticals or you take the real world examples, the people need to know what's going on. And that's why general improvement money was so ridiculous. I mean, in his testimony yesterday in the public corruption trial of John Woods, former state representative Mike O'Neill, who pled guilty to taking $38,000 in kickbacks, he called the general improvement fund a, quote, slush fund. That's what he said on the stand yesterday.
I heard him.
Oh, so were you in the courtroom or?
No.
Okay. You read about
up with it on.
Yeah.
But and then taking $18,000. In two envelopes filled with $100 bills.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and again, it just speaks to the broader corruption that's out there. This pattern is all too striking. When Jake Files in Fort Smith recently has pled to corruption charges involving stealing gift money. Also, I had folks come to me on that issue. And I got this document. Also. This document, a wire transfer from David Norsworthy, who, again, is Michael Morton's partner. I mean, Michael Morton, the same Michael Morton nursing home owner who was in the fiasco in Conway, the corruption in Conway, where Judge Maggio was bribed.
Yeah.
I mean,
pled guilty to taking a bribe, too.
Yeah, he sure did.
There's a lot of pleas. There's a lot of these public officials are pleading guilty. I mean, it's amazing. We need to actually get a list together. How many more there are going to be? Tell me a little bit more about the Freedom of Information Act. We're talking with Joey McCutcheon, a Fort Smith attorney. There's a push to take the FOIA, change it. Am I right to saying we need to give the government 15 days to comply with an FOIA request instead of the current 3? What are your thoughts on that?
Hey, we had is Professor Robert Steinbuck, who wrote what I call the FOIA Bible, said it would have gutted FOIA. What they wanted to do. I mean, FOIA is the people's law, Paul. It's not the government's law. And as was said, I testified in the hearing 2 days ago. The FOIA task force did an amazing job. They shot that proposal down, voted no to recommend it for the next session. And that proposal basically being that government is supposed to, number one, there's a fallacy out there that there's a 3-day rule for government to produce records. Really, they're supposed to produce them immediately. And if they can't find them or they need a look, then they have 3 working days to produce the record. What they proposed last session was to lengthen it to 15 days if the request was, quote, overburdensome. And then they could have lengthened it even more and more to respond to our records request. Well, the committee unanimously voted that, said, we would not recommend that to the legislature. And a wonderful job. Now next session, or next task force meeting, July 9th, an extremely important meeting. They're going to consider Senate Bill 7373, which was, again, guess who brought that bill? Which would have
Senator Hester, right?
Senator Hester. And guess who sat on the committee that heard the bill in the House? Well, that would have been Representative Bob Ballinger. Again, anything that has to do with accountability, it seems that these folks, they don't want accountability, whether it's the right to trial by jury or whether it's FOIA. But Senate Bill 373 combined with the bill we just talked about, 1622, would have taken, experts say, Professor Robertson, would have taken our FOIA law from the strongest in the country for 50 years to the weakest in the country.
This task force or this committee, they're trying to consider what to recommend to the legislature. And so SB 373 failed. It couldn't get out because people, I think, figured out what it was. Now, the interesting thing about that bill was it was going to allow government attorneys. So, for example, if you have a college and you have an attorney representing a college, they could basically claim that the FOIA law doesn't apply to them because of why? What was their rationale, Joey?
Well, what they wanted to do was they made it broad enough. They said basically that if there's possible litigation, and they were claiming attorney-client privilege. So basically, take Ecclesia College. Take Mr. Ballinger and his law partner, Mr. Story. Again, Ballinger's sitting on this committee who's determining this. All they had to do was, let's just say, Ecclesia would just put a CC to Travis Story on the document, and then they would claim that the document was attorney-client privilege. But you would never get documents.
Right.
School boards across this land, across this state, would be CCing every document. And
giving it to their attorney. So basically,
cities.
every document, if you let your attorney look at it and you're a government entity, all of a sudden the attorney's like, attorney-client privilege now trumps FOIA. And it's like we have this everywhere where there's this weird thing where we want attorneys to have all of these loopholes. Now, let me ask you this, Joey. Was this bill filed, 373, Senator Bart Hester, was this bill filed before or after you had your FOIA lawsuit with Ecclesia College?
I know that it was going on about the same time, but to tell you specifically,
you don't know for sure.
I just know when I was testifying that I brought that up in acts of testimony. It was such a conflict. I mean, you got the chairman of the committee, Bob Ballinger, who, by the way, Jim Parsons, who brought this lawsuit against Ecclesia to just asking for records. He was cut off by Representative Bob Ballinger midstream of his testimony. One of the rudest things, and clearly we know the reason why. I mean, it's no secret. I mean, the Good Old Boys Club has got to end, Paul, because it's leading to corruption. And we have got to keep FOIA laws strong. We've got to keep the right to trial by jury strong. We cannot weaken those two accountability instruments, because you know what? If we don't have sunshine laws and we don't have the right to trial by jury, then we will get to the Second Amendment pretty quickly.
So,
because that's the only way you hold government accountable after those mechanisms have gone. Of course, there's the voter box.
Yeah.
Well,
I've got another question here. So, this task force on FOIA, they are rejecting what the legislature last session pretty much, almost fell for. And so I'm curious as to who appointed the task force members to this FOIA, and maybe is that the difference in some of the recommendations? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, no, not necessarily. I mean, the legislature created the task force, and they basically said, okay, the governor can appoint. I think, and don't get me on the specifics here, but the governor can appoint someone. The press can appoint someone. The Arkansas Press Association can appoint someone. So they various people. So it's a wide range of folks on this. But that tells you how bad these bills were. I mean, they had one bill, for example, where they wanted to exempt during an investigation body cams. I mean, we've seen. I mean, I don't trust government, and think about the mistrust that would occur every time that, let's just say, there's an incident involving a police officer. Could be a shooting like we've been seeing across the country, and government says, well, we're not going to give you this under FOIA until this investigation's closed. I mean, that creates mistrust. I mean, give us the footage. I mean, You know, and then I mean, there's good and there's bad conduct on in these type of instances. But that's just an example of where an exemption that they wanted to exempt, make an exemption to producing records. We don't want to become like Tennessee, Paul. Tennessee has 300, I think over 300 exemptions to FOIA.
Yeah.
They have no FOIA law. And Arkansas, I think, has 18 or so.
The point I was making, you mentioned the Press Association gets to make an appointment or selection. I guess my point is when these task forces are created and you have the appointments coming from not just the legislative leadership, we're getting better results. We're getting results that more closely align with what the people want versus when the legislature are the only people that are involved in putting people on a particular committee or task force. You end up with a more controlled, sterile environment that is kind of inside the Marble Palace bubble, and you know, they don't really they just kind of protect the status quo. That's what they do, Joey.
That's a great point. I mean, you know, you've got it's kind of like what's happening with issue 1, Paul. You know, the legislature wants to take over the writing of the rules of the court.
Yes.
I mean, and we know that the legislature is controlled by lobbyists, and it's a political environment, and it's the same thing. So you get terrible results. You get results where they're changing rules about cases in midstream because of the political forces. You know, maybe it's a bribe of a Conway, you know, kind of like the bribery of Jake Files, kind of like by David Norsworthy, you know, kind of like the bribery that we're seeing. You know, you get bad results. For example, you know, I mean, that's clear issue 1. But when the courts make the rules, you know, you have lawyers from both sides taking their time with courts involved. And so you get fair results, and you know, there's accountability measures there.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why issue 1 is so dangerous. I mean, it rigs the system.
Yeah,
I mean,
blurring the lines between the
Wow.
separation of powers. I mean, it's just not a good thing. Hey, one more question, Joey McCutcheon, Fort Smith attorney. Did you read where State Representative Mike O'Neill said the reason he got involved with a kickback scheme with John Woods? He testified yesterday that he went to John Woods' Furnace, Little Rock apartment, and he figured out that John Woods knows how to make money because he had an autographed bat from Pete Rose and an autographed picture of Michael Jordan. And it's like, really? That's the good life? That's how you're like, well, I got to get involved in some public corruption. Was that not just a little bit childish to you to see how easy it was to tempt some of these politicians?
Yeah, I don't know if childish is the word I would use. It's really concerning, and that's why we've got to keep an eye on what public officials are doing. I mean, people are prone to do bad things, and if we're not watching, conduct rewarded, conduct repeated. And if you're making decisions about whether Pete Rose or Michael Jordan's on somebody's walls, then you know it's concerning.
Yeah.
And But I'm really so pleased with the FOIA task force. But the next FOIA task force is going to be huge. They're going to be looking at the definition of a meeting, which the city of Fort Smith, what they want to do is just make the definition so narrow that they just kill FOIA.
Yeah, and they can do business through email out, and they can have little meetings and not have to answer to the people. And they're trying to make it a quorum, Paul. They're trying to make it where you know you have to have a quorum. Like in Fort Smith, you would have to have 4 members together discussing public business as opposed to just 2. Yeah.
I mean, it just lends itself to all kinds of mischief.
Well, we'll be looking out for that on July the 9th. And Joey McCutcheon, we're out of time, sir, but I always appreciate having you on. Keep me posted on what I need to know, okay?
I'll do it.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
Paul.
you. Joey McCutcheon, everybody, we got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, Joe, just tell them to tell that caller to go to the YouTube page, the Conduit News YouTube page, and go listen to our interviews with Senator Brian King and Senator Scott Flippo. Not the most recent one with King, but the one before that, where we talked about the landfill, Pulaski County ruling on those north central Arkansas counties and western Arkansas, where they're being basically forced to pay an $18 fee for every, for property tax tacked on, so that investors can get their money back when they lost their money in a bad landfill deal. And it's a ruling. The guy's saying it's taxation without representation. It absolutely is, because it's coming out of Pulaski County, and it's not, the ruling saying you're going to have to pay this $18 is coming out of Pulaski County, but it's affecting people a long ways away from Pulaski County. So we have already talked about this twice. If you want more information on that, go to the YouTube page, Conduit News, and listen to the interview with Scott Flippo, because he explained what's going on and what we can try to do moving forward, as well as Senator Brian King, another interview. He explained what's going on, because that affects both of their districts. Folks, we've got to go. We'll see you here tomorrow for Johnny Cash Friday.